Today we're going to be doing a very simple wreath, and this is something that you can build on yourself to make more elaborate if you want to, and to add your own style to. So to begin with, you need a plate and a pencil, and we're going to do a nice big circle right in the centre of our paper. I'm using quite a heavy paper, which is why it's not taped down. If you use a lighter paper than this, you may want to tape it to your board, but we're not going to be using lots of water, so your paper really shouldn't cockle. Okay, so one big nice circle, and then we need to follow this with another smaller circle at the base of it. And these two circles are really the basis for the wreath, and anything else that you do on top of that you can adapt. You don't have to copy exactly what I'm doing. I'm keeping it nice and simple. You could add much more. You could add bows and ribbons, etc. And you could do several of these and perhaps make them into some Christmas cards. There's lots of apps nowadays where you can take off the background from your images, and then you can put them onto print and demand sites and use them as Christmas cards and things. So keeping it nice and crisp and simple helps with that, to remove that background and put them onto other things. So I'm painting a poinsettia in the middle, and I'm going to be doing some holly leaves and some little fir leaves all the way around. Now I'm doing natural things, so obviously they're not going to be symmetrical and even because nature isn't like that. But if you wanted to, you could do it more symmetrical than I have and make it a little bit more stylized. Try to keep your pencil lines quite soft. You're going to need to erase these later on, so it's much easier to erase them if you've done them nice and lightly. I'm doing them a little bit hard because I want it to show up to the camera. So keep those soft so that you can erase them later on. The paints that I'm using today are the Sennelier travel set, which has some lovely bright colours in, so it's particularly good for Christmas, and it's got lots of nice reds in. So I use a different red for the poinsettia than I do for the berries of the holly. I nearly said ivy then, holly leaves. I did the holly leaves and the ring itself with quite a blue green, and then kept the more yellow greens, the brighter greens, for the leaves of the poinsettia. Well, they're not technically leaves, it's actually a bract, so it's not really a flower. The flower themselves are the tiny little white ones that come out of those centres where I put the yellow in the centre of the flower there. So it's not a flower, it's a bract. Okay, so when you're actually doing the circle itself, you could make this a lot chunkier. You could add some extra little baubles in or some berries all the way around if you wanted to. You could extend your colour all the way around. But make sure you keep moving your paper. You'll notice I keep turning my paper so that I'm not leaning on the work, and I've got a much better angle for my hand. It's easier for me to manoeuvre my paintbrush. The brush that I'm using is a size 6, and it's a sable one with a really nice tip on it, and it's probably one you've seen me use before if you're used to watching my channel, as it's one of my favourite brushes, this nice sable brush with a lovely tip on it, so I can get into those little shapes. So the circle itself, I was kind of making it like a little bit of fir or conifer, and as I said, they're not all even, they're not the same. If you set off with them all being the same, you've got to continue that all the way around, so just be careful with that. If you want it to look more uniform than mine, go ahead and do that. You might also want to put a bow or a ribbon at the top of the circle if you want. So there's so many ideas. You could do this in lots of different colourways. And with lots of different ideas. You could put baubles on it. You don't have to add a poinsettia. You could add a big bow at the bottom, anything like that. So lots and lots of ideas and ways that you can use this. If you're not too confident with your drawing and you don't just want to draw things out of your head like I have done, then you could perhaps use your smartphone for some reference images. So just have your phone to the side of you and use something like Instagram or Google to look up these shapes of some holly leaves and poinsettia, bows, etc. Whatever it is that you're wanting to draw. If you don't have a smartphone, of course, you could have a look through some magazines, or there's all the junk mail that comes at this time of year that's got these shapes and images in. And you could perhaps save some of those, that if you see some nice ones, you could save them for another time. You'll notice that I'm working wet on dry. So this means I'm allowing the paint to dry in between each layer, and where the different colours are touching each other, I let one colour dry before I apply the next. I've actually speeded this video up by about ×3, That doesn't include the drying time. And all in all, this painting probably took me between half an hour and an hour to complete, which just shows you can get a pleasing watercolour in a very short period of time by keeping it simple like this. So you could go ahead and do lots of these. You could do them in all different colours. You could use different Christmassy themes, all using this simple technique of putting the circle down first and working around that. As I mentioned earlier, you may want to keep an image of your painting and use it for something like a Christmas card on print and demand. Now, we're very, very lucky that it's so much easier nowadays to do this kind of thing yourself from home, particularly if you have a smartphone. So we don't need fancy cameras anymore. Lots of phones have really good cameras on them. So take a picture of your painting in a nice, well-lit area. Sometimes it's good to take them outside and then you've got nice even lighting. So take a good picture, clear picture of your painting once you've finished it and save that to your phone. And then there are all sorts of apps, some free, some paid for, but you need to Google different apps that you can use to edit your images and to remove the background from those. So I use something called Canva. I may have mentioned that before. I use it quite often. I use it in things like my YouTube thumbnails. So it's a very handy app to use, and I have the paid for version of that, and that allows you to very quickly on your phone remove a background from your image, and that's really handy. I use that a lot in Instagram, so if you look at some of my Instagram posts, you'll see how I've removed the background from things and you know, made a nice clean image, particularly in some of my story posts and things like that. So I remove the background, and then you've got the crisp image of just your wreath there, and you can save that and you can download it onto your computer if you want to, and then you can use it in things like maybe Redbubble or lots of other print on demand sites, or just even printing it off yourself at home on your computer. So you could print a few off and then just fasten them to the front of a nice piece of card to make some very homemade individual Christmas cards. There's all sorts of ways of doing these things now with all these apps that we have on our phones. You will see that in places like on the leaves, I've put an extra layer on just to make it a little bit more interesting. And I've just used exactly the same colours as before, using the same ones that are already there on my palette, not mixing any more, so you know, not wasting paint in that way. I've used a couple of different reds and greens. The berries are a slightly different colour to the poinsettia, which is a little bit more on the red orange side of red. You'll see this if you look at them in the shops, they're a little bit more orangey. So nice and bright, keep it nice and bright if you can. So as always, if you've got any questions, please do put those in the comments below. I'm always happy to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Also, you can contact me on Instagram. I use Instagram a lot, so you can message me on Instagram. And yeah, that's about it really. So just a nice, quick, simple watercolour that we can adapt in lots and lots of ways. You could make some really nice big fat wreaths if you wanted to, or you could keep this really simple. You could do it in pink if you wanted to. Whatever you want to do with this, it's just to get that circle down there first and have a bit of fun with it. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I'll be back again with you soon with more watercolour tutorials. Bye bye for now.